So the purpose of our time today begins with the understanding that Black student lives matter. They matter to families, they matter to community, they matter to us within the Department of Education, as well as for an educational system. And then as part of that, in the document that was developed by EECD, the African Canadian Services Branch, in partnership with EECD colleagues, as well as regional coordinators, educational leaders, we recognize that the inclusive education policy requires all of us, compels all of us to be part of that change. In order for African Nova Scotian Black learners to achieve to their potential and to be well and to have an educational experience that nurtures them to be safe and true to their identities. In the time we spend together, we also want to be very intentional about outlining the expediency of the need to move the system forward, to be able to create and make those structural changes to support learners. The purpose of the framework is quite simple. What I've just shared is to move the system forward and also to be able to address the systemic power structures and inequities that create barriers for African Nova Scotia and Black students within Nova Scotia's public education system. We have also designed the framework to build on what works, or the system competencies, and to strengthen those places of our system that are working and that are supporting and inspiring African Nova Scotian students. The impetus for this work actually came before us. You know, as a community, we talk about being here because of those who came before us. And the Black Report is one of those elements or documents that spoke about the vision of what a quality education in Nova Scotia could look like. And they spoke about equity from the perspective of Black learners and their parents. And so when we begin to hear that our Black students, our Black parents are telling us that the system has changed, then we will know that we have achieved the benchmarks that we have set. The Black Report of 1994 was also reiterated, and they actually were responsible for the development of the Council on African Canadian Education. And this is a ministerial council that meets at least 4 times a year. And one of the recommendations to the minister was to have a formalized framework within the foundation document to be able to enhance not only the experience of African Nova Scotian learners, but also to build that system capacity to understand African Nova Scotian people, our histories, our cultures, and our understandings. We're going to ask you if you can turn your attention now to a video that we'd like to show you, and I will turn it over now to Ken Fells to show you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ken Fells. I'd like to acknowledge my elders, through which I have a great deal of wonder and support that they've allowed me to present for them, and welcome to the session. I also want to acknowledge that we're on Mi'kma'ki territory and the unceded territory, especially for those warriors who have guarded this tent area for so long. I want to acknowledge those folks who have passed as well through COVID-19. So please keep that in mind if you go through the session. I'm going to put this video link in the chat, and it's called Unequal Opportunity. So if you bear with me for just a minute, we'll display it. Now, it has a tendency to knock me out after, so just be aware of that. I'm only gone for a second, and I'll be back.
Also want to acknowledge the Black educators, the program director who's joining us this morning. Welcome, Jackie.
So at this time, I'd ask you to actually add your comments in the chat, please, if you don't mind, while Miss Marlene is actually bringing the slide presentation back up. If you want to put your comments in about that video, remember we only have an hour, so this will help us as we continue on, particularly with some of the other aspects of all the components of what we're providing with the branch. So the link is in the chat as well, just so that folks are aware. And if you have links that we could possibly use, it certainly would be appreciated as well. So Miss Marlene, if you could put the additional pieces up so we can go on to the next number of slides. Thank you, Kyle. All right, so the inclusive education policy is very, very significant to tying in all those pieces that certainly provide an opportunity for us to understand what is required. And the inclusive education policy is built on a lot of the themes. Well, actually, we use the inclusive education policy to actually support where we're moving at the branch itself. It is significant as well to note that within the context of the policy, we develop subcommittees on diversity, we develop subcommittees on inclusion. But one of the things that we would add from the branch, it's important to add, would be that you need to have those cultural committees as well to go along with and support what movement we're moving in, whether it's diversity, inclusion, or equity. Next slide. So Melissa is here to help me, but we are going to put a link to this here particular document as well. And this document here, the call to value Black lives, is very, very significant because all staff are called by the inclusive education policy to use their power and privilege to support Black students in feeling safe. That means those safe environments, those safe climates, and that all Black learners are accepted and valued so that they can best learn and succeed during their time in school. Now, the link for that's at the bottom of the slide. We'll put that in the chat as well. But like I suggested earlier, we do only have an hour. So if folks bear with us, we can keep on moving. If you have any questions, put those in the chat too, and we'll answer them as we go along. Inclusive education policy, this is significant because in the inclusive education policy, it defines all roles for all supports, administration, support, parents, students, to give voice. And it's equally in the Education Act that all those categories are there. So the inclusive education policy does address that. If you could just go back one slide, please, first. So those responsibilities stem from the RCEs, the regional centers of education, and all administrators have that power to be part of that role. And those roles and responsibilities are still significant. So if we can go 2 slides ahead. And that includes teachers, support staff, parents, guardians, school planning teams, and in particular, the power that the school planning team has. School planning, the program planning, the collaborative learning groups, collaborative learning teams, all those subgroups I was talking about earlier, to make sure that there are people of African ancestry, people of Mi'kmaq heritage, and we can't forget those people who are impoverished and marginalized, along with our new immigrants. Next slide. I think we're moving on now. Oh, actually, this is ours too. Principles. I'm not going to insult people by reading, but the foundation of where we're moving with the African Nova Scotia framework speaks to education as a right, and it's to enhance and awaken our learners about the purpose and promise of their potential. Spirituality is the foundation of our community. And it doesn't matter whether you're African Baptist, African Episcopalian, Catholic, all those religious foundings that come with us or came with us are still there. Because of those segregated communities, we still have that spirituality because we were brought here to work. We were brought here to go to school. And now learners and descendants of rich, multi-generational, multi-ethnic histories of wisdom, intelligence, and resilience speaks volumes of what's interwoven into our survivability, our innovation, and our adaptability to the system. So we need to be proud of those and demonstrate that resilience over and over, but to actually acknowledge it, to build and validate. Lastly, curriculum resources, we have those available, we have those supports. So it's just to ask the question of how we can support each and every one. Next slide. So Miss Doreen is next, I think.
Yes, actually, I'm jumping in for Doreen. She's not with us this morning. She had a previous appointment. The next couple of slides, we hope will speak to you as they spoke to us about the urgency for change within our system. And the inclusive education policy, as we heard Ken talk about, directs and compels that change. This data that we're going to show you is around how our students are doing. But we also have seminal reports that told us how our students were doing. Back in 1994, we had the Black Report. We had the reality check that looked back on the recommendations that were accepted and how they were implemented. There's a report around how we are doing, the raising the bar, as well as the disaggregated results. So each of these documents and that we have speak the same message, is that we need to continue to not only do more for our children who are in our system, but we need to change the system and the way in which we're working in order to accommodate the children so they can learn. So very quickly, this is from the Program of Learning Assessment for Nova Scotia, and this is available on our provincial website. And I can put that website into the chat after I'm finished. So as we look at reading, and this is African Nova Scotian students in comparison to all other students. African Nova Scotians will be indicated by the green circle, and the rectangular box that is around will indicate all other students. So with respect to reading, 57% of Black students are achieving or achieving above expectation in comparison to 71% of all other students. On this provincial assessment, and this was from 1819, 15 were exempt, 30 students had an IPP, and the participation rate was 92%. If we look at how our African Nova Scotian students are doing within our public system around mathematics at grade 3, we can see 60% are achieving the expected level in comparison to 73. Just to go back, this assessment is now being conducted at the end of grade 3, and the previous assessments were at the beginning of grade 4. This is a new benchmark. In mathematics in grade 6, we can see what the data is telling us in comparison to all other children. The most recent assessment data is from 1920 in reading and mathematics. This is not how we know our children. We know our children have potential. The question is, how will it be nurtured? That's what the inclusive education policy compels us to do. We know the students can no longer wait to experience the right of education. If we look at this slide in grade 10, 1920 data, mathematics, and writing performance.
It's important to note too, Ms. Marlene, that with the conventions itself, if you just go back to the slide, it's more powerful to identify with conventions, particularly 2018, 2019 grade 10 students. 43% of our children are below, development conventions. And, that's the most common aspect of writing, which is unbelievable when you think of a high school student that can't incorporate conventions in the proper way. So that's one of the elaborate areas where we need to identify, because we know our children do better than what assessments are showing.
So we have to ask the question, why is this happening? And has this become the normalized expectation within our province? If we ask how are our children doing with respect to well-being within our province, we know that same urgency exists. Feelings of being unsafe, not wanting to attend class, not being comfortable to speak up in class, not feeling challenged to aspire to more than what they have already achieved, feeling ill-equipped for the next grade level, not feeling they belong, and not experiencing or having someone in the school who understands and advocates for them. These are the points of interest and data that we are changing and are highlighting within our framework. We must make an impact and move from actions to results for our children. And we know it's possible. We're going to ask you to take a moment to watch this video with us. Thank you.
Wisconsin does have a rich cultural and racial diversity. That's just who we are, but how it shows up in education, we can do better. When we come to this frame for Black children, it's this whole conversation around, we feel that there's something that's broken, that we need to fix it, that we have to treat them differently. No?
I'm good at math, reading, social studies, science. I'm really good at drawing and cooking.
Under the conditions that most people are working with in our schools, particularly those schools that are so-called at risk, they're put at risk. They're not at risk because of who's there. They're at risk because of how we treat them.
I actually had advanced classes this year.
And my grades is good. I just checked yesterday.
Children, they all have capital. We all have some unique gifts and talents that are innate to us. How do we tap into their best self?
I go in looking for treasure. I go into school, I want to see all kinds of opportunities, things that are already happening that you haven't even paying attention to, that you can work with right now. And I think we think too much in terms of technical fixes to what really is a cultural problem.
We have 93% attendance, so our students love coming to school. Every morning for announcements, we listen to a song by Nas, I Can. So we stick that in their mindset early on that they can accomplish and be whatever they want to be. It's important that they hear positive affirmations on a regular basis, because once they continue to hear that, they begin to believe it. And once it goes from their head hearing it, it goes to their heart.
When I think about my own teaching and classroom experience, you don't know what you don't know. If I knew that my experiences were different than the children that I'm teaching that are before me, I have some work to do.
All of our teachers, they've had professional development on building relationships with students, making sure that they're checking their biases. And having 2 African-American males at an elementary school have changed the dynamics and culture of our school.
Parents, families, and the school, they're all partners. So what do you do to finesse that? If you don't know who your students are, you don't know who the families are, then the absence of that relationship is not going to help teachers to be able to have positive learning outcomes.
I think our approach here is one based on love. I know it sounds a little corny, but love, 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 love. Part of it's learning, part of it's social. You know, kids show up here every day to connect. Every student wants to feel like they belong. Student-teacher relationship is so important for that to happen, that there shouldn't be any embarrassment with being confused about something or not knowing or just flat out making a mistake.
You want to have a solid relationship and rapport and have a real interest in understanding where students come from, their communities, their families.
For anybody, you gotta come out of yourself. My job is just to love them, reach them, and teach them.
We saw a need for a school-based mentoring program. We were able to find 2 wonderful gentlemen who want to do that work, and it's made all the difference in the world.
My favorite part is just talking with my brothers, how we can keep reaching our goals. If we didn't reach our goals all the way, we can just keep trying.
When we get kids sitting in circle, that alone begins to make a difference. Building that mutual support, and it's also a space for them to have some real intellectual engagement that's not just academic, but just like really opening their minds.
When you got that education and you can go and you can start a career, start a family, and do all the things that you want, that's what makes you a man.
Lots of kids kind of feel shy talking about like their emotions. Here you can kind of be free and tell your brothers what's going on.
Can you imagine a child that has no voice? To have just somebody to just sit down and just don't say nothing, just listen to them. Like, I'm just gonna make this all about you. You just tell me what's on your mind, what's going on in your heart, what's going on at home, what's going on at school. How can I help you become great? And they just tell you everything. And just building that relationship with them to know that, hey, anytime something going on, I can go talk to Mr. White.
A teacher is not just an instructor. A teacher, through and culturally responsive pedagogy, is also a mediator. You know, I'm not imposing my own beliefs on you, but I'm making sure that I'm opening up these doors of opportunity for you.
We have 25 students that are in the program. Everyone has improved in their math assessments. The average increase was 8 points in reading and 11 points in math.
Students are going to talk regardless. They want to be heard. They want to feel valued. And so having circles of support here to validate that, to get them to express themselves, to reflect on who they are and how they can grow as people has been tremendous.
I let them share as much as they want to share. And then when I feel like that they don't want to, I don't push them. The main important part here is about trust.
I like coming to the circle because I know that I could talk about anything to the girls in the group. In this circle, I just feel like I can be myself. It's like walking into a home that you can tell anybody anything.
Today we're going to open up a topic for just dedication and what dedication means to you.
Do good in high school.
Do good in high school?
Okay. You know how you have stuff like on the inside that you like have to carry on your back, weighs you down and make you get bad grades and stuff like that? Like you can come in here and tell anything.
Hypothetically, after college, what type of career would you be pursuing?
Being an entrepreneur, you know, basically running my own business.
I'd be a doctor.
Doctor.
I want to be a surgeon or an OBGYN. I want to be a doctor.
I want to be an orthodontist. Or
They look at this as a sisterhood of the natural circle of support. And what I'm encouraging teachers to do is to build a better relationship, and then there'll be a better understanding of, you know, how they come to school, what they feel, and what is important to them and what is real to them.
Circles started more than 10 years ago. And all Circles did is it created opportunity, created conditions to think out of the box that we usually think of in schools.
That role of facilitator is extremely critical because they're really that point between the students, between staff, and even advocating like on behalf of the students and the families at times. It's not just hard work, but it's heart work at the same time, trying to connect on that human level. We teach them that you're really just there to facilitate. There's like a collective knowledge and each student brings something to the table, and it requires that you look at yourself. So what we try to do is really uncover and unpack what's really at play.
We're brought in to address a symptom. They discover, okay, these are the gaps in our school culture or the problems in our practice. This is what we really need to work on. Circles is a catalyst for change. It's not a program at all. When you change the peer culture, and when I say change, you draw out of kids what they already know and can already do, but now are motivated to, that's when the magic happens.
we can be successful in life, that we can do it.
Like you gotta show like the little ones that they have to do it to like succeed.
This is what we do to support what our students are capable of and the capital that families bring to the school.
Culturally relevant professional development, getting to know your students, what motivates them.
If you want to be culturally responsive, just talk to people. Talk to them about what they like to do outside of school. Talk to them about the most positive things that they love about their community. Just have that dialogue.
And my teachers helped me get an education. They made me a great person.
Everyone realizing that they are in this together. You experience that from the front office staff to the cafeteria. There's an element of trust that you do have my best interests at heart.
So right now we'll move on to Augie. Augie's going to bring together all those components you looked at because all those pieces are in our system.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I thank Kenny and Marlene for starting things off, and we have about 20 minutes left. So could you, in the name of time management, could people put comments about that particular video in the chat? We've been collecting all the comments and we're going to work with them later. So if you could do that, that would be great. I'm going to move on with the next couple slides, again, in the name of time. But if you could put any comments about the video that you watched in the chat, that would be great. So based on what we're talking about with our framework and some of the things that we know from the Black Report reality check, and even the results for our students, which Marlene went over the slides for that today around our achievement in numeracy and literacy, we need to interrupt the system. We need to do things differently to make an impact. So when we look at the number of withdrawals, the disproportionate number of African Nova Scotian or students of African ancestry on IPPs, the racial incidences that happen across the province between teachers and students, administrators and teachers, the limited role models and supports, the amount of suspensions that are attributed to Black students, and the differential access to courses, programming, and opportunities are all things that we would like to disrupt or interrupt and shift it in a new direction. Next slide. So our framework, very quickly, I'll go over the 5 of them, and then the next slide actually goes in a little more detail. But we have 5 pillars that we've built our framework on. We want our framework to be articulated to the system. So this is just an introduction. We will be launching this framework officially in September. But our first pillar is authentic self-identification. We know that all persons of African ancestry do not have the same culture. Some are from the continent directly, some are from the Caribbean, some are from Scarborough, Toronto, Mississauga. Some of them are from our Black loyalist communities, Lincolnville, Sunnyvale, Hammonds Plains, East Preston, North Preston, Cherry Brook, Mulgrave Park. So we would like our parents and students to identify as they are known. And we would also like the system to know that all Black people are not the same. And that may seem facetious to say, but it's true. We are not all one. We want you to see the difference in the way we live, in the way that we learn, in the way that we socialize. So authentic self-identification is key. Knowing them as they are known is connected to this. I have 2 sons. I love them dearly. When they go to school, I want the best things to happen for them. That's the same as any parent. So we want the school system to know our children the same way we know them at home. That's one of our pillars. Educational programming and services. What programming and supports are available for our students that need them? What programming supports have been put on our students that are not needed? And also, when we talk about what we learned from COVID-19 is that the lack of technology and at home and internet access did affect our community in particular. So when we look at the services that are offered, we are very much embedded in trying to, again, interrupt that, moving in a direction that's good for our students and our staff. Empowering parents and families, very key. I know that the key to making Augusto Jones or Augie Jones do his work was to just call home. And so it's the same thing for most students. Make a link with their parents, get to know their parents, even if at first the parents are a little bit standoffish. Maybe they did not have a great experience at school, which based on the numbers, that's probably the reason. But as educators and teachers and administrators, if we could be patient with the parents, allow them to be comfortable with the school system, this will help the achievement levels of their children that walk into the buildings. And lastly, equitable access and involvement. We want our student support workers, our regional coordinators, our teachers, our principals to be at the right tables, having the right conversations at the highest levels, so that right from the very beginning, our students' concerns are embedded in any type of policy or decision making done at the school level or regional level. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go into reading all of these. This PowerPoint will be available afterwards on Google Drive, I think. Marlene can confirm that. But if you look to the left, authentic self-identification, you can look at that. Students and families proudly identify in a certain culture. We would like them to be able to identify that way. Matter of fact, we now have on the student registration form a place where you can put African Canadian, African Caribbean, African from the continent. We allow you to identify on the registration form that was never really offered before. Knowing them as they are known. Authentic strength-based. So we want you to see the strengths of our children, not the weaknesses. And often those weaknesses are based on stereotypes. Educational programming that's equitable for all. And if you are going to have one of our Black students on an IPP, you have to have the accountability and the reasoning why they should be on. We're very fearful of behavior issues being shifted into an IPP decision. So that's just one example of educational programming services. Underneath of that, equitable access. That's already starting to happen. We would like it to continue to happen, where we have Black faces and African Nova Scotian perspectives, African ancestry perspectives at the main tables of education. And lastly, empowering parents and guardians in the community, elders. Our whole community should be comfortable with the school system. And when our community is comfortable, our children will be comfortable. Next slide. So lastly, and this is just a quick list, I'm not going to read it. You guys can take a look at it yourself, but these are all the people. So this framework has been in creation for over a year at this point. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that ACSB did in isolation. We have a great team, but we are not the all-knowing team. We know that we have to go to many other voices. We've put the framework out there. We've gotten feedback. Every time we've gotten feedback, we've added it to the framework to make it better, to improve it, to make it more responsive to the needs. And so that's just a list of all of the people that we have presented to already since last fall. Next slide. And so, Marlene, are we going to go into this Jamboard discussion and how much time we have left? We have about 12 minutes.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So if we, can we get the link in the chat? Perfect. Thank you, Melissa. So if people click on the Jamboard link, it will bring you to our African Nova Scotian Educational Framework. And we've been using our Jamboards here for the last, for all of the SLA sessions, and it's been a great way for us to get feedback. So what you're going to do is you will click on a sticky note. There's a sticky note on the left. You can click on that sticky note, and if you could make these sticky notes blue, if you click on the sticky note, there are colors up top. If you could change your sticky note to blue, that would be great. And you were going to talk about, and we have some prompts in green. So as far as the framework that I went over very quickly, some people would already be familiar with it. There's also a graphic of that framework on the Jamboard. Excuse me. Are these 5 pillars hitting the right areas? Which of these pillars resonates with you personally? What else do you think is necessary as we go forward? We are taking all this data and putting it together before we actually launch this in September. So can you take about 5 minutes and make up sticky notes, blue sticky notes, put them in the middle, and then we will quickly recap what people have put in this Jamboard, and then we'll move on to the next person on the team as we start to close up. Thanks so much. I see that there's a lot of great comments that we've been able to take the comments from the Jamboards and put them into a document that we'll be using going forward. So I really appreciate all of the comments that are there. It is now about 8 minutes. It's 9:53. Marlene, would you like me to quickly go over them, or would you like to go over them as we've got a couple minutes in closing?
Yeah, I think that'd be wonderful if we can go over them. We certainly have time. If people are okay, just if we go past 10 a little bit, just staying with us. We're at the sort of end of our sharing, but I'd love to hear what people have written.
Perfect. So what I'll do, and if people are okay with spending a couple minutes, we'll go over some of the notes that are there. We also are recording this. So we've read out a lot of the notes for the people that are going to listen to this session afterwards and not see the actual Jamboard. So you can continue to put notes up there. I'm going to start at the top left. The power of the circle and the student community voice resonates with me. We need to pay attention to this when engaging in curriculum planning and practice, knowing them as they are known, connecting with home, community, personal experiences. I think the 5 pillars really address the concerns in the system as they stand right now. The one that really resonated with me this morning is educational program and services. And I know that there's an additional piece to that, sticky note that goes with that. Authentic self-identification resonates with someone. Importance of acknowledging and nurturing the potential of our students. Empowering parents to feel they are integral partners in the children's education versus attendees at meetings. Knowing students as they are known and empowering parents and guardians resonates with me. I appreciate the value given to community. When community is comfortable, our children will be comfortable. Meaningful decision-making, program planning can be complicated and intimidating. We need to be more supportive of families. We need to ensure diversity, inclusion, and equity committees have community subcommittees of support to move them forward. And there's a question here, will the adjustments be made to the code of conduct and attendance policy to better align with the inclusion report? So I'm going, that last question I am going to leave for Marlene, because I know she has an answer for that, around what some of the changes that are happening. But what I love about people's comments was seeing that having parents and community involved and having the school system comfortable with our communities and our parents is going to help our children. And so the African proverb is, it takes a village to raise a child. That's not just cliche, that's true. And so we would like for our students to get better results on the ground. They just have to feel better about being at school and feel supported, and have their parents also feel better about, I'm okay communicating with the school. I'm comfortable talking to the principal. I'm comfortable talking to my son's teacher or my daughter's teacher. So a lot of the feedback has really been around appreciating the focus that we have on involving community and parents and elders in the school system, not just during Black History Month, not just during Remembrance Day, but every single day. We want there to be that connection. So Marlene, the one question that's in the yellow sticky note, will adjustments be made to the code of conduct and attendance policy as we're going forward with the inclusion policy?
Thank you, Augie. So now that we have a provincial inclusive education policy, one of the things I certainly remember hearing through the development was also the fact that all of our policies now need to sit underneath the inclusive education policy, which is an overarching way in which our system works, in which Nova Scotia delivers education. So that was certainly part of the discussion, and seeing that policy around inclusive education being the sort of guiding direction for how we work forward, and all other policies needing to connect with that. Thanks, Augie. So I'm going to just stop presenting now and really quickly just pick up where we're at as we move into that. So given that we know there's work that needs to be done in order to move our system forward, we have been intentional around identifying as a branch what are our priorities for our department. So the first one being increasing the number of African Nova Scotian staff. We talked about this framework sitting within the public schools program framework document. We heard about the monitoring of the individual, the planning for students, but also monitoring of the adaptations. As you know, adaptations should be moving students towards the achievement of the outcomes. So that's important that we have the evidence to support that and substantiate that for Black learners. Timely and appropriate responses to racial incidents. And after me, you will hear a bit about the work that Ken Fells has undertaken on behalf of the province to support leaders. We saw the data around our provincial assessments. We know it does not reflect the potential of our Black learners. So we want to see and are aiming to see an increase in levels 3 and 4. We're not normalizing the results to say this is who African Nova Scotian Black learners are. As well as an increased presence in many of the advanced courses and opportunities, IB, Advanced Placement, O2, French Immersion, and as such. And the last one being increased graduation rates. And graduation rates not just in terms of they have a diploma, but they have something that has prepared them to go on to achieve their careers as well as attend post-secondary education. These are some of the things we have been working on. So schools are now required to use disaggregated data. The EECD has worked on a technology sort of approach going forward around the back to school plan. We're also as a branch looking at how to address those disparities. Developing a team of professionals that will support African Nova Scotian students around wellness and achievement. There are 2 courses that African Canadian Services is responsible for. We are revising both of those courses, and yesterday we actually had one of our sessions around 4 teachers who are teaching both of those courses to hear their voices and get feedback. We continue to develop resources here within the department that are reflecting the authentic experiences of African Nova Scotian students, as well as making them a requirement within the public schools. We've worked on changing job descriptions to make sure that they are intentionally inviting and welcoming to African Nova Scotian applicants. The Provincial Educational Support Network, we've started with the Summer Learning Academy this year. We'll be meeting with educational staff as a branch on an ongoing basis, and we continue to collaborate with African Nova Scotian organizations such as the Black Educators Association, Jackie is on the line, DBDLI, CASE, and African Nova Scotian Youth Labs. Any of our partners around educational initiatives, we are deliberately bringing them into the conversation around education, because we know community is a part of the education of Black learners. And we are continuing to support the system in operationalizing CRP. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ken, and you'll have an opportunity to hear about the wonderful work that he has taken up in conjunction with the regional executive directors. Ken?
Yes, can you put the presentation up?
Oh, thank you.
I didn't want to interrupt your flow because you had it going on here.
I'm just going to pull it up again. If somebody can mute your mic, I just hear a little bit of feedback. Thank you.
So once again, folks, hope nobody's getting hurt over there. So anti-racism and anti-discrimination leadership module. It's really important to understand that one of the significant questions that was just asked about the code of conduct and the attendance policy, these are some of the systemic things that are actually the rationale for putting the policy together, because with the incidents that are occurring in the system, we're not recording sometimes the information in a correct mode. And that's probably why there's a cultural silence that we're dealing with. And so the anti-racism module will probably support our peers so that there's no additions to what you're actually doing in school. And that's for the administrators, because we don't want to burden them with any additional stuff. Having been an administrator for 25 years, I certainly don't want anything else on my plate. But if I can use a different lens, or if I can reach out and provide supports in another way, the anti-racism module, what we're going to do is we're going to develop a module. It's going to have exemplars in it. It's going to have all the information, resources. It's going to have a historical context of the intergenerational traumas that have taken place, because a lot of people really don't understand that 200 years of slavery did take place for the enslaved people of African ancestry at Mi'kma'ki here in Nova Scotia, which included New Brunswick. Next slide. So basically what we're doing is we're kind of disrupting that silence, providing an opportunity to build relationships with community and stakeholders. Certainly making sure that the voices of our students are actually being heard, acknowledge that racism, discrimination does exist, and it has manifested. I was watching a powerful video yesterday with youth in Atlanta talking about their experiences, their authentic experiences in not just the city, but in Guysborough County, in Antigonish County, in the South Shore, you know, in the Shelburne area. And the last area, it doesn't resonate with me right away, but the context, all these authentic pieces are so important for those students' voices to be heard. And that's part of what we're going to invest in to bring that forward in January. Acknowledge that discriminatory practices take place by disrupting this silence, naming and examining those concepts. So calculating the costs, I think Marlene gave a great info on disaggregating data, but this needs to be brought forward to the school planning teams, program planning teams, developing those support walls, making sure that perceptions are left at the door, those microaggressions and unconscious and implicit biases are reanalyzed, so that the disparities that are already in place are lessened and that our value systems are left at the door as well. Next slide. So enacting this system change, hey, we got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Honestly and goodness, I mean, it's more important for folk to understand the reality of where we are with that, because the most significant thing we can understand for our people is understand first and foremost that if we're not representing those we serve, we're not representing those we serve. In addition to this, if we're recruiting, we can't be using the window and not a mirror. So in other words, we got to change sometimes who we're actually bringing forward and bringing into that initial process of hiring practices and that type of thing. And that's where this anti-racism module is going to affect everybody. Effective utilizing protocols, data, and dealing with racism, discrimination incidents. Structural barriers, we got to prevent that so we can include our students. Next slide. So if you notice on each one of the slides, I'm going to close with this one here. System accountability. That means if you go back to the inclusion document, it has all the roles of every person who's reaching out to children. Providing ongoing reflection and assessment of your work, increasing the competencies and the competence in anti-racism and anti-discrimination leadership. And as Angela Davis said, in a racist society, it's not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist too. And I'll close there because I know we're out of time or close to it. Next slide. And that's me. So, Ms. Marlene, if you take down your slide, I can get what the new one up.
Deep and dig together on inclusive education. We're going to start driving every conversation we have, every policy we write, and every resource we commit to with one question. How are the children doing? We have groups of kids who aren't doing well, and those communities are saying our kids aren't doing well. And we said, but we're doing this and this and this and this. And we are. We're working hard. And they said, yeah, but our kids aren't doing well. And we said, yeah, but we're doing this and this and that, right? If we can help action and change the question from what we're doing to what difference are we making in the doing, stop doing the stuff that's not making a difference and double down on the stuff that is, right? That's what we're going to be doing this year. We know our African Nova Scotian kids aren't doing as well as they ought to be. Our Mi'kmaq learners are not doing as well as they ought to be. Our kids struggling in families who are struggling every day with poverty are not doing as well as they ought to be. There are other subclusters of kids. So we need to respond differently.
Asking the REDs at the system level to do equity this way. If we do literacy, numeracy, think about your plans. Literacy, numeracy, well-being, equity this way. Because equity has to be incorporated into the literacy, into the numeracy, and into the well-being. Because none of us got here to reach 70% of our kids. But that's what we're doing. And we're working really, really hard. So this can't be about working harder, and this can't be about caring more. Because I don't believe that educators could care more about those kids than they care now. And I don't believe that educators could work harder than they're working now. So it's about different, right? It's about different. It's about time to really challenge ourselves. So for years, if you read the literature and if you listen to people who come in and talk to us, for years, people have been saying things like, all children can learn. And yet, we have evidence that only 70% are learning well, right? So how do we close the gap between our beliefs and our impacts?
I believe every kid in this province deserves to be part of the classroom with classroom teachers. Every classroom teacher in this province cannot be expected to meet the needs of every kid in front of them. So that's a collective responsibility to helping that happen.
How safe, for lack of a better word, is it for a teacher to come and say, I got this group of 6 kids, I'm not moving. I've tried and they're still not moving. I need help. I don't know how to solve this problem of practice. We need to make it okay to say that, and then we need to respond to help them answer that question. Our schools are built, and if you look at them, if you took the roof off and you look down, they look like egg cartons. Because they look like egg cartons doesn't mean we need to practice like they are egg cartons. And the phrase I like to use about this is, independent practicing is inconsistent with professionalism. Gone are the days, right? This province is engaged in a rigorous conversation over the last few years around complex classrooms. Complex classrooms cannot be solved by a lone practitioner, right? So if we're going to reach all kids, we can't expect teachers to individually do that by themselves with the kids in front of them. I'm going to issue to the system an invitation. We put $500,000 in the PB line of this year's inclusion money that we haven't given out yet. Because I'm going to ask schools to say, who's not there yet? How are the children doing and how do you know? And what would you like to do differently this year? And what help do you need? Do you want PD? Do you want a little bit of release time? What do you want, right, to do that? I'm going to invite principals to do that with their staffs. I'm going to caution principals that this needs to be a collective volunteer, not a voluntold activity, right? It needs to be collaborative. And then come in, and our function will be to seed as many schools as we possibly can in the work that they undertake this year. And then we're also going to say, what's the problem of practice that they said they're working on? And then we're going to say, hey, here's 10 schools who are working on this problem of practice for these kids. Let's introduce them to each other. So we're going to network schools so that people aren't working even by themselves under their roof, right? Great systems network. Anything that's moved to kids is a product of ongoing professional learning that's networked. So this is not new. We've endeavored to be inclusive and to be equitable. We haven't achieved it. This is about now a deliberate and intentional focus. We took all year long to build this policy. And we did that because we had a lot of pressure from the system. Where's the policy? Where's the policy? Where's the policy? And I spoke with the commissioners, the 3 commissioners for Students First, and they said, Kathy, get this right, don't get this fast. And on this policy, which is not normal practice for us, I'm appending a list of everybody we talked to, because we talked a lot, right? The other thing that I learned over this journey this year is when you talk about the language we use about inclusion, the practices we want about inclusion, there is very little unanimity. And the first section of this policy says these are our beliefs. In Nova Scotia, this is what we believe about inclusive education. Inclusion is about community. It's about connectedness. It is about learning, but it's not just about learning, right? So we need to think about that. We need to think about high expectations. What's next for that kid? And we're doing it. So we're bringing the policy and the practice, because great systems find a sweet spot between top down and bottom up. And when you reach that sweet spot in a system becomes way more effective. So that's how we're going to join with the sector to accomplish this on behalf of our kids. And there's an urgency to this, right? Black Report was 25 years ago. The data on those kids has not moved. They shouldn't have to wait any longer, right? Same thing for the Mi'kmaq community and the reports we have for them, the newcomers, kids living in poverty. There are clusters of kids who are sitting in that 30% and have been for a long time, and they can't wait anymore.
We will be releasing a website with resources to help.
MTSS is not going to be a manual, step 1, step 2, step 3. It's going to be a complement to professional judgment rooted in learning on behalf of our kids. So this is a great beginning. And I say beginning, not because this stuff isn't out there. The stuff that's out there that's supporting inclusive education is the best kept secrets in Nova Scotia. Part of our job is to uncover them and share them, right? So we're going to build on what we know. We're going to uncover new practices. We're going to support people who need to learn themselves forward differently on behalf of kids. We're going to do it together. It's totally doable. Totally doable. That's the hopeful part of this. We can do this, and I think Nova Scotia is well poised to achieve equity and inclusivity in our education system.
This is the beginning of a year that we will be the first jurisdiction that other jurisdictions talk about when they talk about inclusivity. I know it's there. I know we're there.
There's a moral imperative to this work because all of us got into education to reach every kid. All means all, and we need to be deliberately focused on that now. So thank you. And thank you for this year ahead of time.
So thank you, Ken. Just very quickly, can you, if you've seen the video before, just indicate in the chat yes for us, please? So we are excited to move forward, and as our deputy said, moving forward is our obligation. Doing, or we would say by community, doing right by our children is our obligation. We know this work can be done. We know we are successful with other children. We want the system to be as successful with Black children as they are for all other children. And with that in mind, I'm going to just draw your attention as well to the link in the chat around the feedback form. If you care to take just a moment just to give us your thoughts and feedback on your experience today and what you've heard as well as what we've shared, we certainly would appreciate that. And I'll also add that if you're interested in being involved in any of the work around the framework going forward, we're going to gather all of the comments over the last couple of days that we've learned across our sessions. This is our 5th session that we have done as a branch, and we're so truly grateful to people like you who have joined us. We're also extremely indebted to the team behind the scenes, Learning Resources and Technology led by Sandy McDougall. We were supported by Lael Radke and Chris Jones and a host of other people who made sure that we could provide this experience to you. And to Bridget Williams, who served as the moderator today, we're grateful for you being with us, a member of our team, and getting us started. And to everyone else who's working as hard as we are on behalf of African, Nova Scotian Black learners, we thank you, and we continue to do this work together. Thank you for joining us this morning, as well as extending yourself beyond the original time. We are truly grateful. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of the 7,459 Black learners we have in Nova Scotia's provincial educational system, we are truly grateful for the time that you volunteered to be here this morning. Thank you.